The desperate plea. The Galactic Assembly Hall stretched across 3 kilometers of gleaming crystal and flowing energy. Representatives from 87 different species floated, crawled, and phased through their designated sections. Each zone was carefully designed for different atmospheric needs, gravity requirements, and energy signatures. The great dome above showed the swirling colors of the Andromeda Nebula, where this emergency session was being held. Captain Elena Vasquez adjusted her simple gray uniform and tried not to stare at the magnificent alien beings around her. Earth had only been part of the assembly for 18 months, and she still felt like an outsider among these ancient civilizations. Her small human delegation sat in the newest section, hastily built when Earth achieved faster-than-light travel and proved they weren't just another primitive world. The other species called them Deathworlders. Earth was classified as a Class 15 death planet, with gravity that would crush most alien bones, an atmosphere that was toxic to 70% of galactic citizens, and weather patterns that could kill entire populations. Most assembly members had never seen a human in person. To them, humans were walking nightmares who somehow built spaceships. A tremor ran through the crystal floor. Elena looked toward the main entrance as the massive doors dissolved into light. What stumbled through barely looked alive. They were tall and graceful, with bodies that seemed made of living wood and leaves. Their skin had a green tint that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, and their movements flowed like wind through a forest. But these beings were dying. Their bark-like skin was cracked and gray, their leaves were falling like tears, and the light inside them flickered weakly. The Zephyrians, whispered Dr. Marcus Chen, Elena's scientific advisor. I've studied their culture for years. They're completely peaceful, have never fought a war in their entire history. The lead Zephyrian collapsed at the center of the hall. His voice came out as a whisper that the translation systems amplified across the chamber. I am Elder Bloom of Stars, last speaker of the Zephyrian Collective. I come before this assembly to beg for aid that I know will not come. Assembly Chairman Vortex Prime, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell, floated down from his platform. His voice resonated with concern. Elder Bloom of Stars, what catastrophe has befallen your people? The dying alien looked up with eyes like fading stars. The Devourers have awakened. They come for our world, and in 60 days 12 billion of my people will die. A wave of absolute terror swept through the chamber. Elena had never heard of the Devourers, but every alien representative suddenly looked like they had seen death itself. Impossible, gasped Ambassador Crix, the insectoid representative from the military council. The Devourers have been dormant for 3,000 years. They sleep between meals, Elder Bloom of Stars replied, his voice growing weaker. And now they hunger again. Chairman Vortex Prime's crystalline form flickered with distress. Tell us everything, Elder. The Zephyrian story unfolded like a nightmare. The Devourers were an ancient mechanical plague that had swept across the galaxy millennia ago. They were living machines that consumed all technology, stripping entire planets of metal, energy, and artificial constructs. No one knew who created them or why, but they had destroyed over 200 civilizations before mysteriously going dormant. They do not kill organic life directly, Bloom of Stars explained. They simply take everything we need to survive. Our cities, our ships, our medical equipment, our communication networks. They leave us naked and helpless on dead worlds. Elena watched the alien delegates exchange horrified glances. She could see the calculation in their eyes, the same brutal mathematics that governed survival across the galaxy. How many ships do they field? Asked the military representative. Our scouts counted 50,000 vessels before they were consumed, the elder replied. Each one grows larger as it feeds. Some are now the size of moons. The chamber fell into stunned silence. 50,000 ships was an armada beyond imagination. The entire Galactic Defense Force only possessed 8,000 vessels spread across 87 worlds. Chairman Vortex Prime spoke carefully. Elder Bloom of Stars, we must begin immediate evacuation of your homeworld. How many transport ships do you require? All of them, the Zephyrian whispered. every transport in the galaxy. But even then, we could only save perhaps 2 million souls. The rest would be abandoned to die. Elena watched as delegation after delegation voted for limited evacuation. The mathematics were simple and brutal. Save 2 million Zephyrians or risk the destruction of 87 civilizations fighting an unwinnable war. We cannot sacrifice our entire military for one world, declared the jellyfish-like Aquarian delegate. The logical choice is preservation of the species, not the population. The devourers cannot be fought, agreed the crystalline silicate representative. Every civilization that tried was consumed. We must focus on defending our own territories. Vote after vote chose evacuation over war, preservation over sacrifice, the survival of many over the salvation of all. Elder Bloom of Stars collapsed. Completely, his bioluminescent patterns fading to almost nothing. Other Zephyrian delegates gathered around him, their musical voices joining in what could only be a song of mourning. The session was declared concluded. Delegates began filing out, discussing evacuation schedules and resource allocation. None of them looked at the dying aliens on the chamber floor. Elena remained in her seat, studying the broken beings below. Dr. Chen leaned over and whispered, "Captain, we should go. This isn't our fight." "Isn't it?" Elena replied quietly. She stood and walked down to where Elder Bloom of Stars lay surrounded by his people. The other delegates gave the humans a wide berth, as if their very presence might contaminate the refined atmosphere. Elena knelt beside the alien elder, ignoring the way his sharp bark could cut through her clothing. "Elder Bloom of Stars." The Zephyrian looked up with eyes full of despair. "The Deathworlders come to witness our extinction." "No," Elena said simply. "I came to ask how much time you have." 60 days until they reach our outer colonies. 90 days until they consume our homeworld. Why do you ask such a cruel question? Elena was quiet for a long moment, thinking about her own children back on Earth. She thought about the peaceful cities and green forests of her home world. She thought about what would happen if something like the Devourers ever threatened humanity. "Because 90 days is enough time to prepare," she said finally. Elder Bloom of Stars stared at her in confusion. "Prepare for what?" "For war," Elena replied, her voice carrying the hard edge that made other species nervous. "Earth will help you fight." The alien's bioluminescent patterns began to glow brighter, hope replacing despair in his wooden features. Around the chamber, the few remaining delegates stopped their conversations to stare at the human who had just committed her species to an impossible battle. Elena looked around at their shocked faces and felt a grim smile touch her lips. They called humans Deathworlders like it was a curse. Maybe it was time to show them what creatures forged in hell could really do when innocent people needed protecting. Dr. Chen stared at her in amazement. "Elena, you can't commit Earth to this without authorization." "I'm not committing Earth," she replied, helping Elder Bloom of Stars to his feet. "I'm asking Earth to remember who we are." Within hours, the emergency transmission reached Earth. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every news channel carried the story of the dying aliens and their impossible situation. Social media exploded with debates about humanity's role in galactic affairs. Politicians argued in emergency sessions while military leaders studied battle plans that looked like suicide. But something else happened that surprised the galaxy. Volunteers began stepping forward. Millions of humans from every nation, every background, every walk of life, volunteered to fight for people they had never met against enemies they had never seen. The message that went back to the Galactic Assembly was simple. Earth stands with Zephyr. Send us everything you know about the Devourers. We have work to do. Elder Bloom of Stars, still weak, but no longer dying of despair, sent his own message to his homeworld. Hope returns on ships of steel, carried by creatures of flesh who refuse to let innocence die alone. The galaxy watched in fascination and horror as Earth began mobilizing for the most impossible war in galactic history. The Deathworlders were going to fight an enemy that had never been defeated, and they were doing it for strangers who couldn't fight back. The Deathworld solution. The orbital shipyards around Earth buzzed with activity that hadn't been seen since the first colonial expansions. Admiral Sarah Rodriguez stood in the command center of humanity's largest military station, watching the biggest fleet assembly in human history through massive reinforced windows. Hundreds of ships gathered in Earth's orbit, but these weren't the sleek energy-based vessels that other species preferred. "Show me the Devourer files again," she ordered. The main screen filled with intelligence data provided by the Zephyrians. The Devourers looked like living nightmares made of metal and circuits. They consumed any technology they encountered, analyzing it instantly and developing countermeasures. Energy weapons, kinetic projectiles, smart missiles, defensive shields. Everything the galaxy had ever invented was useless against them. They adapt to any artificial technology within minutes, reported Dr. Chen, who had remained with the Zephyrian delegation. Their learning algorithms are beyond anything we understand. "So we don't use artificial technology," Admiral Rodriguez said calmly. "What do we have that they can't adapt to?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Commander James Ironwolf, a Native American officer who specialized in survival training, stepped forward. "Admiral, what if we fight them the way our ancestors fought? Before guns, before steel, before anything they could possibly understand." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Dr. Chen's eyes widened with understanding. "Biological, weapons, organic materials, stone tools and wooden weapons, things that exist in nature, not technology. They consume metal and energy," Rodriguez mused. "But what about wood, stone, bone, living tissue?" The next 60 days transformed into the most unusual military preparation in human history. Earth's factories stopped producing advanced weapons and started crafting spears with stone points, bows made from organic materials, and arrows tipped with the deadliest biological agents humanity could create. The volunteers were extraordinary. 500,000 humans from every corner of Earth stepped forward. Former soldiers, farmers, hunters, athletes, and ordinary citizens who simply refused to let 12 billion innocents die. They trained with weapons their great-great-grandparents might have recognized. Elena, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, visited the training centers personally. She watched soldiers practice fighting in conditions that would kill most aliens instantly. They learned to hold their breath in vacuum for short periods, trained to fight in extreme temperatures, and practiced combat techniques that relied purely on human strength and endurance. "The other species think we've lost our minds," reported her communications officer. "The Galactic Assembly is calling this primitive suicide." "Let them," Elena replied. "Sometimes the oldest solutions work best." The Zephyrians had sent their entire surviving fleet to help, 300 ships filled with refugees and what remained of their military. Elder Bloom of Stars had recovered enough to coordinate with human commanders, sharing everything his people knew about Devourer tactics. "Your approach is fascinating," he told Elena during a strategy meeting. "In 3,000 years, no species has tried fighting them without advanced technology." "That's because most species became advanced by abandoning primitive methods," Elena replied. "Humans never forgot how to be primitive. We just learned to be advanced as well." The human fleet that assembled was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of energy weapons, the ships carried catapults and ballistae scaled up for space combat. Instead of smart missiles, they launched organic projectiles that would decompose after impact. Instead of energy shields, they relied on armor made from specially treated organic materials that could regenerate like living tissue. Most shocking of all were the human fighters themselves. They wore armor crafted from bone and treated leather, carried weapons of wood and stone, and prepared for close combat in the vacuum of space using techniques that predated civilization. "The Devourers have arrived at the outer edge of Zephyrian space," reported the long-range sensors. 50,000 ships just as the Elder described. Some are the size of asteroids now. Elena studied the tactical display showing the massive enemy fleet. "How long until they reach the homeworld?" 18 days at their current pace, came the reply. "Then we meet them halfway." The combined human Zephyrian fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading for what would become known as the Battle of the Thornwood Nebula. As they traveled, Elena walked through her flagship, speaking to the human warriors preparing for combat. Everyone in this fleet volunteered, she told them. Nobody forced you to come. You could have stayed home with your families and been safe. Instead, you chose to help people you've never met fight enemies you've never seen. The warriors listened in silence as she outlined the battle plan. They would engage the Devourers using weapons and tactics the enemy had never encountered. Wooden, spears tipped with concentrated acids, stone hammers that could shatter metal, and organic explosives that would spread biological agents throughout enemy ships. The Devourers expect us to fight like a technological civilization, Elena continued. Energy weapons, smart tactics, defensive strategies. We're going to fight like humans instead. We're going to use every primitive technique our species ever learned. The battle began at the edge of the nebula, where cosmic dust would interfere with the Devourers' sensors. The human fleet struck first, launching organic projectiles that the enemy ships couldn't analyze or counter. Wooden spears punched through metal hulls, carrying payloads of acid and biological agents deep into the alien vessels. The Devourers reacted with confusion. Their adaptive algorithms tried to analyze the incoming weapons but found nothing to adapt to. How do you counter a sharpened stick? How do you develop defenses against a rock thrown with sufficient force? Boarding parties away, Elena ordered. This was the truly insane part of the human plan. While the Zephyrians provided support fire with their remaining energy weapons, human warriors launched themselves directly at the Devourer ships, using nothing but organic propulsion systems and personal life support that was more biological. Then technological Commander Ironwolf led the first boarding party onto a Devourer ship the size of a city. His team carried stone axes, wooden clubs, and spears tipped with the most corrosive acids Earth could produce. The interior of the enemy vessel looked like a mechanical nightmare, with walls that pulsed with alien circuits and floors that tried to analyze their equipment. Remember, he radioed to his team, they can't adapt to us if they can't understand us. The Devourer ship's defense systems tried to respond to the intruders. Mechanical tendrils reached out to grab them, but the humans fought back with techniques that predated technology. They used leverage and momentum, biological strength and primitive cunning. Stone hammers shattered circuit boards, acid-tipped spears melted through control systems. Human hands, protected by organic gloves, ripped apart mechanical components that had never encountered such direct primitive assault. The Devourers sent smaller mechanical units to fight the boarders. These adaptive machines tried to analyze human combat techniques, but how do you analyze instinct? How do you counter 10,000 years of evolutionary combat programming? They're falling back, Ironwolf reported with amazement. The machines can't figure out how to fight us. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out on dozens of Devourer ships. Human warriors fought with the fury of their ancestors, using weapons and techniques that the enemy's advanced systems simply couldn't comprehend or counter. The tide turned when Dr. Chen implemented the final phase of their plan. Using Zephyrian biotechnology, he had created organic viruses specifically designed to attack mechanical systems. These weren't computer viruses, they were actual living organisms that fed on metal and circuits. Deploy the bioagents, Elena ordered. Human ships launched clouds of microscopic organisms into the enemy fleet. The Devourer's sensors detected them too late. Their adaptive systems tried to develop countermeasures, but these weren't technological weapons. They were living creatures doing what evolution had programmed them to do: survive and reproduce by consuming their environment. The effect was devastating. Devourer ships began shutting down as the bioagents spread through their systems. Mechanical components dissolved. Circuit boards became food for organisms that saw technology as nothing more than an exotic meal. Admiral, called the sensor operator, the enemy fleet is retreating. Elena stared at the tactical display in amazement. For the first time in Galactic history, the Devourers were running away. 50,000 ships that had consumed 200 civilizations were fleeing from 500 human vessels and a handful of Zephyrian survivors. The cost had been enormous. Earth lost nearly half its fleet and 200,000 volunteers, but 12 billion Zephyrians were saved, and the galaxy had learned something profound about the humans they called Deathworlders. Elder bloom of stars, tears of gratitude flowing down his bark-like cheeks, transmitted a message that echoed across the galaxy. Today we learned that the most dangerous creatures in the universe are not those who destroy without thought, but those who sacrifice everything to protect the innocent. The victory celebration was brief. Elena knew that the Devourers would eventually return, probably with new adaptations. But they had proven something important. Sometimes the most advanced problems required the most primitive solutions. Sometimes you had to go backward to move forward. As the combined fleet returned to Zephyrian space, Elena received a message from Earth. The President's voice was filled with pride and sorrow. "Admiral, the entire planet is watching. You've shown the galaxy what humans are truly capable of." Elena looked out at the stars, thinking about the volunteers who wouldn't be coming home. "We showed them that being called Deathworlders isn't an insult. It's a responsibility. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The species that had seemed too dangerous to trust had proven they were exactly dangerous enough to call friends. And in the councils of 100 worlds, a new phrase entered common usage. When innocents cry for help, pray the humans are listening.